true. There is an ancient peace you carry in your heart and have not lost. In you is a holiness the thought of sin has never touched. All this today you will remember. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one. There is a silence into which the world cannot intrude. Here in your treasure lies, and here your rest. What sacred vision shows becomes the healing and salvation of the world. All this today you will remember. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one with God who is our source. Now we are one. Now we are one. Now we are one.
And good morning. It's 10 a.m. Central European Summertime, and welcome to Unity, serving military overseas, where through understanding and demonstration of truth principles, we can be the catalyst along the positive path for spiritual living. And good morning. I'm Randy Fillmore, and I'm honored to be serving as your host and platform assistant for today's worship service. Keith was scheduled to produce today's broadcast, but he called in and he's a little under the weather. And with all of the Florida COVID-19, we've been setting records for the last couple of weeks, and we didn't want to take any chances with him feeling ill. So we wanted to make sure that he stays safe, and I stay safe, and we wanted to make sure that we still continued today's broadcast. So rather than taking any risks, I'm flying solo this morning. So if you look, and if you see me looking down a little bit, I've got my teleprompter, remote control, and I've also got my hands on the keyboard that is right to my right. And we're just trying to make sure I'm trying to do all this kind of like the Navy AFRTS, how they do it aboard ship, or how they used to do it aboard ship, I should say. Because this is a live broadcast, and we are coming to you from the Unity Serving Military Overseas Studios in historic downtown Melbourne, Florida, just south of Patrick Air Force Base. And we want you to know that it is a blessing to have you join me for today's broadcast. I invite you to check in via Facebook. In between some of the segments, I'll be dashing back over to the main console and system, just as off to my left, where Keith and Joseph would typically sit, and check to see who is checking in. And we do want to acknowledge your presence as well. This is the second week that we've changed things up a little bit in our worship service, focusing on music and meditation and message, and stripping away all of the other things. Now, we've already heard from Deborah Thornton and her group a cappella with One with Our Source during the pre-service countdown. But right now it's Dana Agnellini and I Am Enough.
At peace right now, I am at one with my source. No time for fear right now, I'm happy on my course. I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. I am whole, I am complete. I've got everything I need. I am enough. I release and I let go. Troubles at your door. I've got everything I need, and each day I'm blessed with more. I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. I am whole, I am complete. I've got everything I need. I am enough. To be of service to your plan. Use me any way you like, I'll do anything I can. I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. I am whole, I am complete. I've got everything I need. I am enough. I am whole, I am complete. I've got everything I need. I am enough.
Dana Agnellini and I Am Enough. That's one of the most difficult things that we can accept within ourselves, that we are enough, and we truly are. I want to read today's daily word for Sunday, July the 5th, comfort. Our affirmation is, Christ in me is my comfort. Experiences that move me out of my comfort zone are part of my life. The first day at a new school, starting or leaving a job, a new phase in a relationship, retiring from a career, the passing of a loved one. Any change can invoke discomfort, even grief. I grieve when I think of change as loss of security, loss of my place in the community, or loss of love. And we know that that's not necessarily true, that we have lost. And the reason I say that is that using the affirmation, Christ in me is my comfort, we have in us and through us the Christ presence. We're connecting with the source, as Deborah sang earlier, one with our source. The Christ presence is always with me, and that is my comfort. That is my source. So I would encourage you, being with the military, we all know that we probably encounter more change in our lives, and not only lives for active duty service members, but for our dependents, our spouses, our kids, our partners. They are experiencing just as much change as we do when you PCS from one place to another, whether it's overseas or whether it's CONUS. New schools, new supervisors, new jobs, new opportunities, new houses, new cities, new locations, new language. So it is always a challenge. And in that challenge, we take the opportunity, and we have the opportunity to find comfort, find that presence, the Christ presence that flows in and through each one of us. And if we take that opportunity to remember that and connect with Source, not only ourselves, but for those who we care about, that's actually one of the most important things. So we invite you to try that as well. I'm going to invite you right now to prepare yourselves for meditation. We're going to do things a little differently today. We're going to be using a silent unity meditation, and it's available on the unity.org website under meditations. And we have a video that is actually shot from locally here, Vero Beach, Florida, the Japanese Murakami Gardens. And that'll be the video that is provided. So I invite you to prepare yourself for meditation as we tune into Silent Unity for one of their guided meditations.
Taking a few minutes out of a busy day for meditation clears your mind and relaxes your body. Tuning in to your higher self, the divine within, shines a light on the next right steps on your path. Slowly and deeply breathe in and out. Allow your thoughts to clear and your body to soften. Place your attention on your heart and repeat this affirmation silently to yourself. Be still and know. Be still and know. Allow love to fill your heart as you continue to repeat the affirmation. Divine love is natural to you and is always accessible to you as you tune into your heart. Allow this love to well up in your heart. Feel love traveling from your heart throughout your entire body. Let it travel down your torso, through your legs, into your ankles, feet, and toes. Breathe into that love. Now feel love traveling from your heart throughout your chest, your shoulders, arms, hands, and fingers. Feel it move up your neck to your jaw, face, and head. Breathe into that love. Now scan your body as you continue to affirm, be still and know. Be still and know. Feel the energy of divine love that fills your entire being. You are meant to be a presence of love in this world for yourself and for others. Think of one other person who you would like to send love to. As you think of them, imagine the love that fills your being, radiating to them and filling them with divine love. Bless them with the affirmation, be still and know. Be still and know. As you return to the activities of your day, you keep your heart open to the love within, and it blesses you and all those around you. You remember that you are a blessing of love to yourself and others. And you remember that silent unity is always here for you.
I was recently talking with a beloved on the phone and sharing my experience of healing and shifts in perspective and perception as it relates to healing. And I was sharing with them that I had an experience, and I think this is something that really happens. I think it's a bit of a divine blueprint for awakening and healing. But I had an experience where I used to get bronchitis. Nearly every year I would get a bronchial infection. And as I went through college, it would start happening around finals time. And every year around finals, I would get this bronchitis. And I think it generally happened after finals. So it was like this time where, you could finally let down your guard, and then boom, I would get sick. So when I wanted to celebrate, I'd be sick. And, it got to the point where it was scary because I would know the first moment it would start coming, I'd feel that scratchiness the night before. And I would know the next day I would have this full blown, even now thinking about it, it's like, I remember that, this full blown, like just thickness around my throat and burning. And then it would just expand into this bronchial thing. And even one year when I came home from school to my dad's house, I had this bronchial asthmatic pneumonia, as it turned out it was. And I think I didn't have health insurance at the time, if I remember that correctly. I ended up in the hospital with anaphylactic shock because they gave me a sample of a medicine that now is known to be fairly controversial. But regardless, it was a big experience. And so this was something that I had a history with. And when I was in Unity Ministerial School, we used to have these things called intensives, and they would bring in an expert in an experiential field. So someone that wrote a book or led a process or a practice, and we would dive deep into the work with them. And so the woman who wrote the book, The Wolf at the Door, came to be with us, and she was sharing these stories about healing and awakening. And as she was sharing them, I fully had an experience with the healing of this bronchial condition. I knew in that conversation and in the meditation, in the reflection time, that when she spoke and she shared whatever it was that she shared at the time, I knew that something had shifted in me and that this would not be coming. I would not have a problem with bronchitis anymore, which was saying a lot given that I had years of this happening over and over and over and getting worse. And so I don't really remember the time frame. I think it was right after that, but it was within a reasonable amount of time of that feeling or epiphany. And I went to bed one night and I started to feel the feeling. It started to come back. And I remember sitting with it and processing and doing a little meditation and kind of just saying, Spirit, universe, I got that this was healed. I had this realization. I knew this was healed. And what is this? Why is it here? And I could feel a bit of the fear coming up that it was going to come back, that I was going to wake up the next morning and here it was going to be. And instead of just unconsciously going through that, I sat with it. And I felt this confidence that even though I was having that same feeling, it was healed. And no matter what it looked like right now, no matter if I woke up the next morning and I had full-fledged bronchitis, whatever it was, I knew in my heart of hearts, like Myrtle Fillmore when she healed from tuberculosis, it wasn't immediate that the healing happened. It took time. I think it took about 2 years for it to unfold as her body's wellness. So I knew, and that shifted the fear, right? The fear was enveloped in a strength and a harmonizing and a love because I still felt safe, even though the conditions on the outside weren't showing it. And so I woke up the next morning, and what did I find? the screen's not frozen. What I found was nothingness. There was nothing there. It was completely gone. What every single time, 100% of the time, turned into bronchitis, turned into nothing, and it dissolved. Now, I share that story because that is, I think, sometimes a process people have with deep healing. In Lessons in Truth, they call it chemicalization. It's like when something is understood, it outpictures through your body, but it doesn't necessarily mean the same condition is happening. And so when I had that experience, what I see it now as in kind of the spiritual process is the death knell. It's the scream on its way out. It's something screaming on its way out, going, are you listening? Can you feel it? Are you afraid of me? And what I don't like to think of the universe in terms, or God in terms of a being that would test us, but that is one of the most relatable languages to put this in, is like a test. To me, it was more of an opportunity of sorts, an opportunity to process a new state of awareness and affirm my realization through metabolizing the fear. It's like, rather than God or the universe testing me, it was my opportunity to get it and to approach it from mindfulness, to be not afraid, and to stand in my power, my practice, to stand in grace, to stand in harmonizing, so that just like having antibodies that fight any condition, so that this arrival did not generate the same response, and it did not stir my faith. So I share this story because collectively, I think that we are experiencing the death knell of something. And that something is the distorted masculine. I believe we're hearing the cries of the distorted masculine, and it's getting louder and louder because, as evolution of consciousness has it, people are shifting, right? Minds are shifting, ideas are shifting, identities are shifting. In fact, we no longer look at gender as being male and female. We look at non-binary. We look at ourselves as a whole, not as separate senses of self. It has become very common to understand and to recognize that in everyone there is a divine masculine and there is a divine feminine and there's a divine spectrum of self that emerges. And I think that's important because we're getting the truth in that practice that we are made in the image and likeness of God, of the grand overall design. It's not God that is made in our image and likeness. See, the old limited idea was that God, even though that's not what was taught, it's that God was made in our image and likeness. That's why we have this idea of a man, an anthropomorphic God that was in the clouds or distant or somehow separate and all powerful, strong, mighty, fierce, right? And the feminine got dropped out and the non-binary got dropped out. But the truth is that we are made in the image and likeness of all that is God. That is gender neutral. That is liberation of everything. You know, the God, the energy of life that makes the seeds, that makes the waters, that makes the forest, the birds, the creatures, the genders, all of it. It's a holism, not a separate identifiable, I don't even know how to say it, chop upable existence that you can say, this is it, that's it. It's so much more expansive than that. And so it is part of our spiritual work to be midwifing this birth. I should have thought of a better word for that since this is on the divine masculine, but truly to be nurturing the evolution of consciousness. Now, Teilhard de Chardin, in The Phenomena of Man, he wrote this. He said, the time has come to realize that an interpretation of the universe, even a positivist one, remains unsatisfying unless it covers the interior as well as the exterior of things, mind as well as matter. The true physics is that which will one day achieve the inclusion of man in his wholeness in a coherent picture of the world. Breathe that in for a moment. Breathe that in. So if we are seeing the distorted masculine, and that is on its evolutionary path out, what is rising? What is rising? The sacred masculine. The sacred masculine is rising. And this isn't not about a religious idea. This is about a spiritual concept. So we see largely at work today, and the conversation around the world today is on the distorted masculine, right? We're seeing it in our systems. We're seeing it in policing. We're seeing it in leadership. We're seeing it in online bullying. We're seeing it in these force-filled energies that are harsh. But what I believe is truth is that the sacred masculine is rising. The sacred masculine is the male without a mask on. It's strength through authentic, vulnerable masculinity. It's action born from wisdom. And the sacred masculine is the place in man or within our masculinity where creation and expansion are heart-centered and relational. Where creation and expansion are heart-centered and relational. We hear so much about the divine, and it was put so beautifully by Alethea Luna. She said this, she said, "How often have you seen the divine masculine discussed or revered as opposed to the divine feminine? Be honest," she says, "not much. Maybe a few here and there have touched on the matter, but overall, people aren't paying much attention to that topic." Now, she goes on to say this. She says, "Let's face it, there's not an overwhelmingly large number of positive role models out there of the divine masculine. In fact, to come across a truly mature and integrated male," she says, "is rather like stumbling upon a rare delicacy or a mythical unicorn." We have a lot of mythical unicorns in Unity. Why is that the case? She says, "The unfortunate reality is that up to this point in history, we have mostly been presented with the shadow side of the masculine. We have seen how bloodthirsty, arrogant, domineering, and destructive masculine energy can be. Therefore, most of us have lost our interest and, dare I say, respect for this fundamental aspect of existence. The tragic truth," she says, "is that most of the large-scale suffering in history has been instigated, inflicted, and or carried out by men. Until this day, the man, a phrase that can refer to governments or authorities, continues to inflict oppression and spread greed, prejudice, and corruption," she says. "The Crusades and witch hunts, 2 major world wars, genocides, tribal race wars, dictators, terrorist groups, fundamentalist religions, cults, and the mass rape and murder committed across the world. I could go on and on about the atrocities committed largely by men. It's no wonder that many people have a bad taste in their mouth at the divine masculine, and the divine masculine is being ignored," she says. Whew. Now, I know those are some sharp statements. I know that those are some sharp statements. But in order to heal something, one of the first steps is seeing it, right? So we are seeing this distorted masculine, what she calls the shadow side. We are seeing it just run rampant in the world. And I believe that we are at the point in our humanity and our divinity that we are recognizing that that is not the full nature of masculinity, that in fact something has been, like she said, largely ignored. And it's a dangerous thing to ignore our divinity. Why is it so important to explore, to see the distorted masculine and to explore the sacred masculine? It is so important because we need to hear about it. We need to learn about it so that we can share about it, so that we can support it, and so that we can spread it. And if we're not aware, if we don't add mindfulness to this conversation, then we will inadvertently shut it down. We will unknowingly be a part of prospering the dysfunctional or distorted masculine and restricting and enslaving the sacred masculine. It's so important to have the collective conversation, because the future of humanity, the human race, in fact, literally depends on it. In liberation theology, we have the idea that we must be liberated from social, political, economic oppression, and that is part of our awakening or salvation. Well, we also have a spiritual liberation that needs to happen. The spiritual liberation is the honoring of the divine within the wholeness that we are, and creating a space where everyone equally has the opportunity to express that wholeness and have it be greeted with celebration and support in its uniqueness and individuality. But what tends to happen is this: the first human reaction or condition of the ego, or whatever you want to call it, would be to delete the masculine. It would be to say, get rid of it, right? So there's a lot of that energy of just get rid of it. I want to see it gone. Get rid of it. But that's not healing, is it, friends? That is not healing. That's part of the ego mind that is actually afraid. The second call of the ego mind is to call on the rise of the feminine to heal it, to say, may the feminine come forward and take over and fix this, fix these things that we talked about, fix this energy, be the dominant energy. Friends, that's not healing and wholeness either. The third call of the ego is to say, the children are the future. They will solve it. They will resolve it. They're born into a different consciousness. They don't have these lenses. They don't have these filters. They don't have this imbalance. They don't have this distortion. That is not the solution either, friends. That is cowardice. That is not seizing the opportunity that is within each of us for spiritual growth, awakening, and development. It is not optional to engage in the process of expansion. It's not optional to engage in the process of expansion or to dish it out and to say they need to do it, or they need to do it, or he needs to do it, or she needs to do it, or whatever it is. It's not part of the non-binary consciousness to be healing all of this. It is part of our wholeness to experience the healing within each one of us. So you get that this conversation isn't about men and women. This conversation is about our wholeness. It's not just about masculinity and femininity or non-binary consciousness. This is about God expressing freely in us, through us, and as us. The rise of the feminine won't heal the world, and that's probably a radical thing to say. It will prolong life. It will save it to some extent. But until we understand the divine or sacred masculine, it's only a Band-Aid. We're only passing it off rather than being accountable. So integration of the whole is what we're called to do. The Jungian psychologist, Esther Harding, said, if any human being is to reach full maturity, both the masculine and feminine sides of the personality must be brought up in consciousness. Charles Filmer talked about the carnal mind, and that we have an aspect of ourselves that is very animal in nature, and that needs to be tempered, that needs to be brought into the spiritual realm. It needs to be governed by the spiritual. Pierre Desjardins said, I am not a human being enjoying a spiritual life. I am a spiritual being enjoying a human life. That's the fundamental basis of the perspective we have to come from. We have to come from our divine nature and allow that divine nature to govern, let's say, the human life, the human condition. But what happens when we are not awake to this conversation? What tends to happen is that we do not develop our self-knowledge. We do not develop a deep understanding of how we operate and the masculine within each one of us. So we need to look at, what does the masculine do? Now, we've heard about some of the history of what happens. We all know that. We can all feel that in our lives and in our world. But personally, what is that experience? So that nature in us, the distorted masculine, is the nature in us that says nothing will ever be enough, that always wants more of something tangible, more stuff, more attention, more power, more money, more praise, more fame, more sex, whatever it is, it wants more. Give me more. It wants to be higher. It keeps wanting to go higher. I want to be above this. I want to be in charge of that. I want to dominate. I want to have authority. I want to go up and up and up and up and up, right? That distorted masculine also has fear of sexuality. It has discomfort with sexuality, so that sexuality gets exaggerated in certain areas. It gets exaggerated, and it celebrates nudity and pornography sometimes, but crucifies breastfeeding, right? The distorted masculine moves into a place of separation where it starts categorizing things as inferior. Now, open up to this conversation, right? Male, female, non-binary, it doesn't matter. Open up to this conversation. Can I recognize those things inside of myself? Can I recognize that idea of nothing will ever be enough, of needing higher and higher, more and more, greater and greater, power, authority, sexual discomforts or fear? That part in us that, instead of protecting and stewarding, might pervert or coerce or try to possess, rather than support, nourish, nurture. It's also that part in us that won't let ourselves be known, or just picks like one person to be known by. Do you know that concept where you might have one woman, and that one woman knows everything about you? That one woman is the one you cry in front of. That one woman is the one you share with. That is one of the ego traps of the distorted masculine. And that's one that often can be a trap in this human condition, because we often celebrate it. See, the flip side of that is that the person on the other side, the one person, gets to feel very special, gets to feel like, I know this person more than anyone else. No one else gets to know this person. And we really need to look at this deeply, because what happens when we do that is we cage the bird, right? We build a fence around someone without even knowing it, because if there is an expansion of the relational, right? If we become more heart-centered and more relational, then that individual who connects with only one person and shares with only one person begins to develop a deepened sense of self, a deepened sense of worthiness, a deepened sense of knowing that if they communicate with other people, if they're vulnerable with other people, if they're authentic with other people, if they connect with other people, then they can grow, they can get support, they can have nourishment in different ways, right? Not just from one avenue. And if that is that one avenue, if you're the recipient of that one avenue, and it's valued so much, then what happens when someone starts breaking out of the distorted masculine into the divine or the sacred masculine? What happens is that the distortion of the feminine can start to occur, and it will start to pull back. It will start to be threatened. No, I want to be the one that's special. I want to be the only one. I can't believe you would share that with anyone else. I can't believe that you would have any sort of connection or intimacy with another. And that happens often because there's another cage that we are pressed into, and that's the cage of our sexuality, that a relationship can't be intimate or deep without having a sexual element to it. So until that energy is lifted up and raised, as Charles Fillmore would say, until that energy is raised up to a spiritual understanding, to a spiritual level where we understand that that call for more, or that call to sexualize, the call to sexualize is a call for creation and connection and harmonizing. That's all it is. When it is misunderstood, it is like an overdrive of physical. But in its true form, in its perfect potential, it is this incredible fertilization energy of multiplication, of creation, right? And this higher thinking allows us to understand all of these aspects in a whole, right? So it's like the divine masculine is not being held captive just by the distorted masculine. It's being held captive because it's for each one of us to look at, how do I benefit from the distorted masculine? How am I addicted to the distorted masculine? How am I not even knowing what I'm doing to prosper it? How am I prospering it? How am I keeping it alive? Have I asked myself the deep questions so that I can actually liberate the sacred masculine? So spiritually, to develop the sacred masculine, we need to lift from, not throw out, but lift from these ideas and temper them with consciousness, raise them into consciousness. We must start to deconstruct and look at our assumptions about masculinity, to look at how we can become relational, how we can have connection, how can we create intimacy without having the fears around that holding us back. So it takes self-knowledge, it takes self-control, it takes responsibility, it takes emotional maturity. It's even this conversation about, how do we be with anger? How do we be with our power? How do we be with our strength? What is your relationship with your power, with your strength, with your anger? Do you have a consciousness that includes a healthy response to your own anger? Because if you're in the human condition, it's going to come up. Is there a spiritual maturity that we can begin to support that holds the space for authenticity, vulnerability, relational connection, and heart-centered action? Certainly there are. If anyone has heard of something called the Mankind Project, it is an amazing community of men coming together to support men developing the sacred masculine. Incredible work, deep work. I have seen it over and over again in our Unity men. Our Unity men are somewhat of these unicorns. I'm not going to say that we're going to have t-shirts now that are like Unity men unicorns, but this amazing and sometimes rare, but if you're willing to take the deep dive into relationships with people, you find out that this really isn't rare. It's just sometimes hidden. But these men that embrace connection, that embrace authentic sharing, that share with each other and share with everyone from a vulnerable place, that know the power of physical connection and intimacy, so they know the value of a hug and they encourage that. Unity men are often ones that at one point were told, men don't hug, men don't smile, men don't say I love you, men don't do XYZ. Fill in the blank, right? Fill in the blank. Men don't do this. If that is in your mind, it is time to let that go. It is time to let that go, because it is keeping humanity captive. Unity men are ones that actually bring the hugs from the spiritual community to the neighborhood, to the workplace. They share from the heart, they cry, and they express their divinity through the tears, through the hugs, and through the authentic sharing. One of, I think, the greatest examples of the sacred masculine at work today is the Reverend Dr. William Barber. If you haven't heard of him, he's one to look up. But one of my first experiences with him was at a conference, and he was just incredible with power, with conviction, with commitment, with heart, with a deep, deep, deep relational connectivity. He shared his message of a world that worked for all. He shared his understanding of the history of humanity and our masculinity and our femininity and this evolution of consciousness. He shared all of that. And he shared these words with me: fusion, collaboration. And when I heard those words, a whole new understanding was born in me. He was bringing us from the realm of competition, from the realm of separation, into the realm of spiritual harmonizing, of fusion collaboration, looking at all of the highest parts, looking at what everyone does best and bringing it together. And he's teaching that fusion collaboration is stepping out of self-interest. It's stepping out of inferiority. It's stepping out of separation, and it's moving in our togetherness. See, things that are not rooted in equality, that are not rooted in unity and oneness, and then don't honor our wholeness, they cannot thrive eternally because they are not rooted in truth. A competitive mind builds an empire. A collaborative mind creates a sanctuary. Teilhard de Chardin said, the history of the living world can be summarized as the elaboration of ever more perfect eyes within a cosmos in which there is always something more to be seen. So let's breathe in to this acknowledgement and this celebration of the sacred masculine. Let us have a commitment to an authentic recovery of the sacred masculine. As Matthew Fox said, he identified 4 tools. He said that if we are to see evidence of this fatherly heart, the sacred masculine, we will see people who, 1, celebrate the divine feminine with deep power and comfort. 2, we will see spiritual warriors, very distinct, he says, from soldiers or strength, strength through power, but compassion and leadership, not through force or domination or violence. And he said 3, we will see individuals who are not afraid of sexual diversity. They will have comfort in their own sexuality and will not be threatened by that of others. They will have a healthy sexuality. And 4, honoring intergenerational wisdom. Intergenerational wisdom. I'm closing with this statement from Teilhard de Chardin. Someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And then, for a second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire. From sacred scripture, not by might, not by power, but by thy spirit, says the Lord. Namaste.
Thank you, Reverend Erin. Great words that are truly inspirational, and we'll try to get the Reverend William Barber's information, and we'll be posting that on the Facebook page as well. We do want to remind you, and I certainly want to be one of those that have that Unity Men male unicorn t-shirts. We'll have to see where we can get some of those. I want to remind you that is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to call, and they're available. Prayer Associates are available right now. The telephone number on your screen right there. Make sure if you are overseas throughout the European Theater or the Indo-Pacific Theater, where we have broadcast earlier in the day, 01-816-969-2000. Like I say, Prayer Associates are available 24 hours a day just for you to pray with you and provide affirmative prayer. Silent Unity has been praying with people of all faiths for over 135 years. Next week, Reverend Cheryl Myers, Senior Minister at Unity of Gaithersburg, is with us next week, and her talk is on the lesson of allowing. And I just want to make sure that I'm getting ready to push the next button, because earlier I pushed the wrong button at this point in time. We do want to thank you for worshiping with me today. Love to hear your thoughts about the changes to the worship service, and let us know that you have watched us. I know we have many number of views that are not necessarily occurring when we are live. So if there is a time that is more convenient than Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Central European Summer Time, please let us know. We are here to support your spiritual needs at Unity Serving Military Overseas. So if there's if we need to broadcast at 8 a.m. Central European Summer Time, so that you've got a little more of the day, we're looking for that feedback, looking for that information. So now it's time to speak the prayer for protection, that was actually written by James Dillard Freeman in about 1941 and carried throughout the world by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines the world over since World War II. And I invite you to recite. The light of God surrounds me. I am light. The love of God enfolds me. I am love. The power of God protects me. I am power. The presence of God watches over me. I am the presence. Wherever I am, God is. As I know, all is divine. And now we close today's worship service with "Let There Be Peace on Earth and Let It Begin with Me," courtesy of Unity Village Chapel. I invite you to have a very, very blessed week.
Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my song.